Have you ever thought about what magic system Bleach is based upon, or questioned which character is the most skilled when it comes to Kido? Maybe you've been confused about the whereabouts of the Kidō Corps ever since they were introduced in the story. Kido refers to the dark arts of the Shinigami. They are a unique form of spell casting, typically performed by reciting an incantation. As a fundamental aspect of Shinigami combat, Kido spells subtly reflect a character's strength, with the rank of the spell giving insights into their spiritual power. Most Kido spells are numbered from 1 to 99, and only Shinigami with immense spiritual energy are capable of casting spells in the 90s. For instance, Sosuke Aizen famously uses Hado 90 Kurohitsugi, a spell that is powerful enough to distort time and space itself. Although we do see Kido used throughout the series, it can be easy to overlook just how vast and complex of a power system this is. Within this video, I'm going to break down the two main types of Kido, which are Hado and Bakudo. Hado spells are used for direct attacks, while Bakudo serves as a supportive combat tool, like utilizing barriers, binding spells, and seals. Uncategorized spells also exist, and these include forbidden magic, which falls outside of traditional Kido classifications. Now be sure to stick around until the very end of this video, as I'll be going over every Hado and Bakudo spell that has been revealed within Bleach, and I'll also be explaining the origins of the Kidō Corps and highlighting some of the most notable Kido utilized in Bleach. So without further delay, here is my comprehensive video breaking down every Kido spell in Bleach. Zankensoki is a collective term which encompasses the four core forms of Shinigami combat. These are Zanjutsu, which is swordsmanship, Hakuda, which is hand-to-hand combat, Kido, which are demon arts, and lastly there is Hoho, which is footwork. In my opinion, Kido is one of the most underutilized fighting styles, especially as we approach the later stages of the story. During the 1000-Year Blood War arc, we do see glimpses of its use, like when Ichibei employs a secret Hado spell against Yhwach in chapter 607, and when characters like Nanao, Shunsui, and Yumichika utilize Kido spells in their battles. However, beyond these brief moments, Kido doesn't seem to be as heavily relied upon in the battles against the Quincy. As we near cores 3 and 4 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, I'd like to shine a spotlight on this unique power system. Kido harnesses the Shinigami's spiritual energy in a variety of techniques. Essentially, it relies on a Shinigami's spiritual energy, which is the internalized spiritual life force within their soul. The larger that someone's spiritual energy pool is, then the higher their spiritual pressure tends to be. While closely linked, it's important to distinguish that spiritual energy and spiritual pressure are in fact different in nature. This is why we see some of the most powerful characters like Aizen, Ichibei, Urahara, and Yamamoto using the most advanced Kido spells with ease. Most Kido spells are numbered from 1 to 99, with lower numbers under 30 indicating low-class spells, mid-class spells fall between 30 and 60, and high-class Kido spells are numbered above 60. Spells numbered above 90 are considered to be forbidden due to their immense power. The overwhelming strength of these spells is greatly enhanced by reciting a unique incantation beforehand. These incantations amplify both the strength and effectiveness of the Kido spell. However, skilled Shinigami are able to add flexibility to their combat style by revoking incantations altogether, or by using double incantations for an added effect. In an interview for the Bleach Jet art book, Kubo was asked about the process behind creating Kido and Zanpakuto incantations in question number 16. Kubo explained that he often draws inspiration from song lyrics and thinks deeply about the sound and visual impact of these incantations. He emphasized that his goal is to make the words resonate with people, to the point where they'd want to repeat them themselves. Kubo also hinted that some incantations draw inspiration from mythology, with the most notable example being the 4-part barrier that Hachi uses against Baragon in chapter 369. This Kido is inspired by the mythological 4 beasts representing the cardinal directions in Japanese and other mythologies. It's impressive how Kubo pulls inspiration from a wide range of sources in order to create the unique incantations of Kido. Kido frequently appears throughout the story, especially used by the Vizards. One fan asked Kubo on Klub Outside in question 506 if all of the Vizards were to battle simultaneously, who amongst them is the strongest in Kido? Kubo answered that after Hachi, Rose would be the second strongest based on their versatility with Kido. However, Kubo added that determining the strongest Kido user overall would be very situational. In question 507, Kubo was asked how the Vizards make a living. He revealed that while Love works part-time at a shop, Hachi is revealed to collaborate with Tessai in order to develop Kido goods for the Soul Society. These insights shed light on the formidable Kido practitioners Hachi and Tessai, and it's no surprise to Bleach fans that during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, it's revealed that Tessai was the former Kidō Corps commander and Grand Kido Chief, with Hachi serving as his vice. Kido is classified into several types, including binding spells, destructive spells, and healing spells. Binding spells, or Bakudo, specialize in defense, barriers, and sealing techniques, offering more than just offensive power. Bakudo allows Shinigami to gain subtle advantages in battle by controlling the flow of combat outside of direct attacks. These barriers, made from concentrated spiritual energy, come in various shapes, sizes, and colors, with some used for offense and others for containment. One prominent use of barriers is during the Fate Karakura Town arc, where Hachi traps Baragon, the former king of Hueco Mundo. Barriers are also able to mask a Shinigami's Reiatsu or render them invisible. The strength of a barrier correlates with a Shinigami's spiritual power, meaning that barriers which are created by Shinigami born from noble families are unable to be easily penetrated by those of individuals who are not born in nobility. Some barriers require time to activate, while others can be set up in advance. Seals are even more powerful than barriers, but need more preparation time. They require a high level of spiritual pressure and can only be created by highly ranking Shinigami. Hado encompasses offensive spells, and the strength of these spells increases with the caster's power. The highest ranking Hado, which are in the 90s, are wielded by elite Shinigami like Urahara, Aizen, and Yamamoto. For example, Yamamoto uses a sacrificial spell called Gisei Hado, which requires the user to sacrifice a part of their body. Kaido, or Healing Dark Arts, refers to unnumbered Kido spells which are used for healing and spiritual recovery. These do not require incantations, and they are versatile in treating injuries. According to the Bleach databook 13 Blades, in page 170, Kaido was invented by Tanjiro Korinji, which had earned him a position within the Zero Division. Now lastly, we have Kinjutsu, which are forbidden techniques, which are classified as Kido spells that are illegal to use. The punishment for using them is severe, often resulting in imprisonment or execution. These forbidden Kido are featured in both the Turn Back the Pendulum arc as well as the Fate Karakura Town arc. So now that we have all of the basic groundwork laid, let's now dive into a detailed breakdown of all of the Hado spells. So we're starting from the very top with Hado number 1, known as Sho. This translates to thrust in English. According to the Bleach databooks, it's a basic Hado which generates a force of impact rather than inflicting actual damage. This is a simple spell, but it has its uses. We first see it used when Byakuya uses it in the Arrancar arc in chapter 301. This is following Rukia's long battle against the 9th Espada Arañero. She is left unconscious and immobile, and Byakuya, with a mere point of his finger, releases a small surge of energy which pushes her body to safety away from him. Now the second spell is Hado number 4, Byakurai. This spell involves focusing high density spiritual energy at the user's fingertip, which is then discharged in a concentrated lightning strike. Rukia demonstrates this technique for the first time in chapter 165 while attempting to fend off a massive hollow in Karakura Town. At this point, however, Rukia is in her Gigai, limiting her ability to generate sufficient power with the spell. A more impressive display of Byakurai occurs in chapter 44 during Ichigo's battle with Byakuya Kuchiki. Byakuya points his finger at Ichigo's shoulder, unleashing a powerful lightning rod which pierces right through his body. The attack is is so powerful that it leaves a visible hole in Ichigo's shoulder, which can be seen when he's laying on the ground. This blow is so severe that Ichigo's hollow side white takes control in order to prevent his complete defeat. In some instances, Shinigami are able to channel this energy through both hands instead of just a single fingertip. Known as Bound Lightning, Hado number 11, Suzuri Raiden, is a spell which allows the user to channel an electric current through any object that they are touching. We witnessed this Kido being used by Shuhei Hisagi in chapter 337 during the Arrancar arc. While battling the monstrous Ion, Hisagi channels the current through his Zanpakuto, which then passes through the chains, entangling the giant hollow. However, despite its functionality, the spell lacks sufficient power to do any real damage to Ion, and this highlights its limitations against tougher opponents. Hado number 12, Fushibi, which translates to Hidden Fire, is a spell used by Momo in chapter 335, and she uses it against the Tres Bestia. In this instance, Momo cleverly combines Fushibi with Hado number 31, Shaka Ho, while also using Bakudo 26 Kyoko in order to hide the spells. This creates a net-like structure which results in a large explosion, catching the Arrancar off guard. Unfortunately, Hado number 12 doesn't make another appearance in the manga following this usage by Momo. Hado number 31, Shaka Ho, which translates to Red Flame Cannon, is a lower level Hado spell used by Shinigami which allows them to generate high temperature flames from one or both of their hands. Because this spell is taught at the Shinigami Academy, it is a go-to technique for many of the Shinigami. For example, we first see Momo use Shaka Ho as a student in chapter -17. In chapter 248, Renji attempts to use this spell for illumination but humorously fails, creating only a tiny orb of light. Rukia then scolds him for attempting an incantation that he has yet to master. The flames from Shaka Ho usually manifest as red or crimson energy orbs. The size of the orbs can vary depending on the strength of the user, and the spell's destructive power can range from causing small explosions to generating large pillars of spiritual energy. Next, we have Hado number 32, Okasen, which translates to Golden Flash. This is a Kido spell first seen in chapter 405 when Urahara uses it against Aizen in his cocoon form. To execute the spell, Urahara raises his Zanpakuto in front of his body, generating a yellow sphere of energy. Once the orb reaches its peak power, it's released in a wide arc, sending a powerful stream of energy towards the target. However, due to Aizen's transcendence at this point in the story, he effortlessly deflects the attack using his Zanpakuto, highlighting the gap in power between Aizen here and Urahara. Following this, we have Hado number 33, Sokatsui, which translates to Pale Fire Crash. Interestingly, in the early chapters, both Rukia and Byakuya mistakenly categorize it as a Bakudo spell, as they refer to it as Bakudo number 33. This is seen in chapter 9 and chapter 142. In chapter 9, Rukia uses Sokatsui against a hollow, reciting the full incantation before unleashing a wave of blue flames from her palm. This Kido spell seems to be a favorite of the Kuchiki family, as Byakuya also uses it during his fight with Renji in chapter 142. What sets Byakuya apart is his ability to use the spell without an incantation, which makes his Sokatsui far more powerful than Rukia's. His casting of the spell is large and devastating, crashing through buildings, and it was strong enough to disrupt Renji's Bankai. This subtle difference showcases Byakuya's mastery of Kido, as he can use high-level spells without incantations, a feat which amplifies his already immense spiritual power. By contrast, while Rukia can use Sokatsui without an incantation, by chapter 266, her version lacks the same power due to a lower spiritual energy. Byakuya's greater spiritual energy allows him to perform these Kido spells at a much higher level. Moreover, his proficiency with Kido is further demonstrated by his ability to cast advanced spells like Bakudo number 81, Danku, and Hado number 73, Soren Sokatsui. He does this without the need for the full incantation while still maintaining their effectiveness. While chanting the incantation gives the spell its full power, those with enough spiritual energy are able to amplify it on their own. When such individuals recite the incantation, they can increase the spell's strength even further. This highlights just how much the strength of Kido is tied to the user's spiritual pressure. Next up is Hado number 54 Haien, or as it's also known as Abolition Flame. In chapter 213 we witness Kaname Tozen use Hado number 54 in response to Grimmjow's unauthorized attacks on the Shinigami in the world of the living. Haien is a flame-based Kido spell that incinerates anything that it touches. As we see with Grimmjow, his severed arm is instantly consumed by the flames upon contact with the spell. Though this Kido is only shown once in the series, it serves as a testament to Tozen's strength and mastery of mid-level Kido, as he is able to cast it without an incantation, thus showcasing his skill as a former Gote 13 captain. Hado number 57 Daichi Tenyo, which translates to Ground Swell Dance, is introduced later in the series during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and this is when Yumichika uses it against Bambietta in chapter 589. Recognizing the unique properties of Bambietta's bombs, which make objects that they collide into explode rather than the bombs themselves, Yumichika cleverly counters her attacks with this Kido. Daichi Tenyo allows the user to levitate objects similar to how magicians can make things float. Yumichika strategically moves objects in mid-air to deflect Bambietta's assaults. Notably, Yumichika is the only member of Squad 11 who regularly employs Kido in battle, despite the squad's focus on direct combat and their open disdain for utilizing Kido. Hado number 58 Tenran, which translates to Tornado, appears in chapter 323 when Kira uses it to summon a powerful tornado which envelops an Arrancar opponent. Kira creates this storm by spinning his Zanpakuto in a fan-like motion, generating the whirlwind. Additionally, in chapter 21 of the Can't Be Your Own World light novels, Tokinada employs Tenran by incorporating the ashes of Hinako into the winds that he generates. This was an attempt to overwhelm Shunsui and the other Shinigami in the Valley of Screams, as he distributes Hinako's ash over a vast area. Tokinada is able to mimic other Zanpakuto abilities, and he had used Tenran as a deadly combination with Hinako's ash. Hado number 63 Raikoho, or as it's translated to Fiery Lightning Howl, is a devastating lightning-based Kido attack. It is prominently used by Kukakushiba in chapter 177, where she uses it to take down Aizen's gatekeepers. After chanting the lengthy incantation, Kukaku forms a massive yellow lightning orb which unleashes a powerful torrent of energy. This thunderous blast causes significant damage to her target, leaving the gatekeeper Higon Yudo incapacitated. The Shiba family's proficiency with this spell highlights their expertise in destructive Kido. Now, Hado number 73 Soren Sokatsui, which translates to Twin Lotus's Pale Fire Crash, is a advanced form of Sokatsui, as it doubles its power by releasing 2 blasts of blue energy instead of 1. In chapter 266, Rukia utilizes this spell during her battle with Aranero. By reciting an extended incantation, Rukia maximizes the power of Soren Sokatsui, resulting in an enormous burst of flames that shatters a large section of the battlefield, and it traps Aranero. The intense force of the spell causes Aranero's mask to crack, revealing his grotesque true form. Initially listed as Hado number 63 Soren Sokatsui, it was later reclassified as Hado number 73 in the Bleach official character book 2 Masked. A fan on Kubo's official fan club Klub Outside had asked if Rukia's chant was a combination of Soren Sokatsui and Rikujo Koro spells. Kubo confirmed that Rukia had indeed inserted a shortened version of Rikujo Koro's incantation into the full incantation of Soren Sokatsui, and this is so that it would have an enhanced effect overall. Next we have Hado number 78 Zangerin, which translates to Slicing Flower Ring. We see this during the 1000-Year Blood War arc in chapter 647 when Shunsui Kyoraku faces off against Lil Barrow. When confronted with Lil's holy form, Shunsui unleashes Hado number 78 Zangerin, and this powerful Kido spell allows Shunsui to release a large amount of energy from his Zanpakuto, creating a massive blast capable of demolishing a building. However, despite its high ranking level, this spell doesn't even leave a scratch on Lil Barrow, highlighting the immense power gap between becoming the head captain and the leader of the Schutzstaffel. Hado number 88 Hiryu Gekizoku Shinten Raiho, or as it's translated to Dragon Strike Heaven Shaking Lightning Cannon, is a high-level Hado spell reserved for masterclass Kido users. It first appears in chapter -98 when Urahara and Tessai confront Aizen after discovering his holification experiments on the Vizards. In this scene, Tessai unleashes a powerful beam of electrical and spiritual energy from his palm. This beam explodes upon hitting its target. Tessai's mastery is highlighted here as he performs this spell without the need for an incantation. Despite its immense power, the attack is nullified by Aizen's use of Bakudo number 81 Danku. On Klub Outside question 516, a fan speculated that Danku has an anti-Hado property, capable of blocking all Hado spells below 89, and this fan had hypothesized that it was designed as a countermeasure against high-level Hado used by enemy Shinigami in the past. While Kubo didn't confirm this theory, he acknowledged it as a strong hypothesis, suggesting that it may be close to the truth. Hado number 90 Kurohitsugi, which translates to Black Coffin, is one of the most famous Kido spells in BLEACH. It is showcased in chapter 176 and chapter 418, and both times it was used by Aizen. This spell summons a black coffin-like structure that traps and attacks its target. What's remarkable about Kurohitsugi is its symbolism of death and the way that it distorts time and gravity in a metaphysical space when performed with its full incantation. In its first appearance, the coffin is adorned with spikes that impale the target inside. However, when Aizen uses it against Ichigo in chapter 418, the environment itself darkens and multiple coffins appear, converging on Ichigo. During its first usage, Aizen notes that he was only able to unleash a third of its true power against Seijin Komamura. It's worth noting that Kurohitsugi has only been successfully performed by Aizen, as it requires an immense amount of spiritual pressure, which Aizen has an abundant amount of. Next, we have Hado number 91 Senju Koten Taiho, which translates to Thousand Hand Bright Heaven Cannon. This is a spell performed by Urahara in chapter 402. This Kido requires a lengthy incantation to manifest 10 pink beams of energy which converge on a target, resulting in a massive explosion. Despite the power of this spell, Aizen remains unscathed after being hit by it, demonstrating how much stronger he has become after merging with the Hokyoku. Following this, we have Hado number 96 Ito Kaso. This translates to Flame Sword Burial, and it's used by none other than Head Captain Yamamoto. This is first seen in chapter 396, where Aizen observes the cracks forming on Yamamoto's arm after casting the spell. Hado number 96 is a forbidden technique that sacrifices part of the caster's body in order to activate. This is a grim price that Yamamoto pays, as he sacrifices his left arm in order to cast this spell. This Kido manifests as a massive pillar of flame erupting from the ground, engulfing the surrounding area. While Aizen was lucky to avoid significant damage, it's implied that this was due to his Hokyoku enhanced durability. In Spirits Are Forever With You, Soya Izashiro also briefly utilizes this spell. Now finally, we have the last Hado spell revealed in BLEACH, and it's the ultimate high-ranking Hado, Hado number 99 Goryu Tenmetsu. This translates to 5 Dragon Destruction. This devastating Kido spell is used by Aizen during both the Fake Karakura Town arc and the 1000-Year Blood War arc. It also appears in the BLEACH light novel Can't Fear Homeworld, where Shuhei Hisagi explains that Goryu Tenmetsu is forbidden because it draws upon the spiritual pulse of the surrounding area in order to enhance its power. When activated, the caster's spiritual energy lifts large sections of the ground into the air, forming 5 massive dragons of energy. The color of the dragon varies depending on the user's Reiatsu, as when Aizen performs Goryu Tenmetsu in chapter 683, the dragons are light purple in color. This is in contrast to when Urahara uses it it in Can't Be Your Own World as the 5 dragons manifest with a dark red color. Okay, let's now move on to all of the Bakudo spells, and we're beginning with Bakudo number 1, Sai, which translates to restrain. This is a basic binding spell which immobilizes an enemy by constraining their limbs. This is actually the very first Kido spell introduced in the Bleach series, as it debuts within chapter 1 of the manga. Without using an incantation, Rukia simply points 2 fingers at Ichigo, instantly binding his arms behind his back with an invisible force. Despite Rukia stating that this spell requires a high-level incantation, Ichigo, who is still a human at this point, manages to break free from it. This could imply that either Sai is a lower level Kido than Rukia has suggested, or that Ichigo has incredible latent potential even as a human. Next we have Bakudo number 4, Hainawa, which translates to slithering rope. This spell binds opponents with a rope of energy made from reishi. Rukia demonstrates Hainawa during her fight against the Espada Aranero in chapter 266. She conjures a glowing yellow rope that wraps around her enemy's arms and body, restricting their movements. This scene also showcases Rukia's growing mastery of Kido, as she immediately follows Hainawa with a powerful double incantation, casting Bakudo number 61, Kidō Corps. Bakudo number 8, Seki, translates to repulsion, and it's a simple defensive spell which forms a small orb of energy used to repel attacks. Captain Ukitake uses it during his encounter with Lilynet in chapter 336. The light blue orb he generates deflects one of Lilynet's kicks. While it is effective, Seki is a straightforward Kido spell that isn't showcased much in the series after this moment. Following this we have Bakudo number 26, Kyoko, which translates to bent light, and this is a spell used to bend light, concealing both the caster and their spiritual pressure. We first see it used by Aizen in chapter -107 and later by Momo in chapter 335. Momo utilizes it in an elaborate strategy to hide her spiritual energy while setting a trap up for the Tres Bestia, skillfully combining multiple Kido spells. It's also speculated that Aizen employed Kyoko when he swapped himself with Momo during the Fake Karakura Town arc, thus masking his presence while using Hyokasui Getsu to deceive everyone into believing that they were still seeing him. Bakudo number 30, Shitotsu Sanzen, which translates to triple flash beak slash, is a Kido spell first seen in chapter 330 of the manga. This spell is used by Soifon during her fight against Vega. What makes Shitotsu Sanzen unique is how it forms the Shinigami's energy into a inverted yellow triangle. Smaller triangles are generated within the larger one, and they shoot out in order to pin the target against a surface, effectively trapping them in place. Despite its interesting mechanics, we unfortunately never see this spell used again in the series. After this we have Bakudo number 39, Enkosen, which translates to Circle Lock Fan. This is a Kido spell that Kira uses in chapter 322. With this technique, Kira generates a large spinning disc of concentrated spiritual pressure by positioning either his hands or his Zanpakuto in front of himself in a defensive gesture. The disc serves as a formidable barrier, effectively blocking his opponent's attack and providing him with solid defense in battle. In chapter 172, after Aizen and Gin escape from the Central 46 compound, Isane Kotetsu utilizes Bakudo number 58, Kaku Shizui Jaku, which translates to Seize Foot Chase Sparrow, in order to track them down. To activate this spell, Isane draws a circle on the ground with black powder and divides it into 4 quadrants, each filled with unique symbols. When she places her hands on the circle, it illuminates, sharpening her senses. Numbers appear within each quadrant which correspond to coordinates, thus allowing her to pinpoint Aizen's location, and essentially this spell functions like a spiritual energy compass, enabling the caster to locate a specific individual by locking onto their spiritual signature. Bakudo 61, Kidō Corps, is a powerful restraining Kido used to immobilize a target. It is most notably used by Byakuya Kuchiki, and it's first seen in chapter 142 during his fight with Renji in the Soul Society arc. During this battle, Renji believes that he has the upper hand, boasting that his Bankai has granted him the ability to anticipate Byakuya's every move. However, Byakuya calmly counters, explaining that due to the immense spiritual pressure required, mastering Bankai takes an additional 10 years of training. Recognizing Renji's inexperience, Byakuya immobilizes him with Kidō Corps Kido by pointing his palm at Renji as 6 rods of blue light materialize and strike Renji, trapping him in an unbreakable grip. Later in chapter 402, we see Urahara Kisuke use the same technique against Aizen. Urahara's version of Rikujo Koro appears to be even more powerful as his beams of light shine brighter than Byakuya's. The 6 broad beams slam into Aizen's torso, completely immobilizing him and preventing him from moving any part of his body, even those not directly hit by the light. This spell is also shown in chapter 266, where it is used in combination with Bakudo number 4 Hainawa for added effectiveness. In chapter 324, during Shuhei Hisagi's fight against Findo, we witness him casting Bakudo number 62 Hyapo Rankan. This translates to 100-step balustrade. This Kido spell is unique in its execution, as Hisagi conjures a single glowing rod in his hand, which he throws towards his opponent. Upon release, this rod multiplies instantly into hundreds of rods, each aimed at pinning the target down and immobilizing them in a fixed position. Unfortunately, despite its impressive nature, this spell is never used again throughout the series. But fascinatingly, Hyapo Rankan does appear within Bleach Movie 2 The Diamond Dust Rebellion before officially appearing in the manga. Bakudo number 63 Sajo Sabaku appears in the Ten Back the Pendulum arc when Hachi uses it in an attempt to restrain Kensei. Sajo Sabaku translates to ethereal binding chain. This powerful restraint spell manifests as a long glowing rope made of yellow energy. By raising his palm and forming a fist, Hachi is able to summon this binding chain, which wraps around Kensei's upper body, restricting his movement. Though the spell is designed to be unbreakable by physical strength, Kensei in his holified form demonstrates incredible power by breaking free from its grip, demonstrating just how powerful holification can be. Now we move into the higher level Bakudo spells with the number 70s, as we begin with Bakudo number 75, which is Goju Tekkan. This translates to 5 iron pillar penetration. This is an advanced sealing technique. In chapter 218, the Vizards use this Kido to restrain Ichigo during his holification training, binding him with 5 massive iron pillars. Hachi conjures this spell by first clasping his hands together, which causes 5 spears with elongated ends to appear above him. These spheres arrange themselves in a circle, and upon Hachi slamming his palms downward, they sink into the ground. A light then shines above Hachi's head, and from this light, 5 enormous pillars connected by chains emerge as they descend and pin Ichigo down to the ground. This spell is especially notable for its ability to completely immobilize somebody as powerful as Ichigo, and in particular while he was undergoing holification. Bakudo number 77 Tente Kura is one of the higher level Kido spells, and it's typically used when a Shinigami needs to broadcast their voice and relay a message to their comrades at the same time. Due to its complexity, it's generally performed only by lieutenant or captain level Shinigami. Some of the notable characters who have used this spell include Isane Kotetsu in chapter 172, Rangiku in chapter 497, and Tozen in chapter 314. What makes Tente Kura particularly fascinating is the ritual required to activate it. The caster must draw symbols on the ground and their arms using black powder. In Rangiku's case, during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, she took this a step further by using her own blood to inscribe the symbols. Once the Shinigami extends their hands forward, a black box materializes in front of them. They then perform a series of unique hand gestures, summoning root-like branches in mid-air that connect to the glowing box. When the Shinigami places their hands on the box, the branches light up, creating a glowing grid that spreads outward. This grid serves as a network to transmit messages to any comrade that the Shinigami wishes to communicate with. For the messages to be conveyed, the Shinigami must draw the necessary symbols on their arms, which are activated by the spell. Interestingly, the message can either be sent by the caster or by another Shinigami in the vicinity. However, if someone is unfamiliar with the caster's Reiatsu, they won't be able to hear the message. For example, in chapter 173, Orihime says that she couldn't hear anything after Isane used Tente Kura, which Chad explains is because Orihime hadn't come into direct contact with the 4th Division's Reiatsu. In the same chapter, we also see that someone highly skilled at detecting Reiatsu like Aizen can sense the disruption when Tente Kura is in use. Some fans have wondered why this method of communication isn't used more frequently instead of the Hell butterflies, which is a black butterfly that is paired with a Shinigami used as a basic messaging device. The simple answer is that lower ranking Shinigami lack the proficiency to use Kido spells at this level, and even those who can use Tentekura find it demanding to recite and control. Additionally, Tentekura is most often employed during high stress situations like battles, and typically hell butterflies are more efficient and less taxing to use, especially during times of peace or for low level alerts. Next is Bakudo number 79 Kuyo Shibari, which translates to 9 Sun Bind. This high ranking Kido spell is used by Urahara in his battle against Aizen during the Arrancar arc, as he uses it in chapter 402. The purpose of this spell is to immobilize the target, which Urahara accomplishes by summoning 8 black spheres of spiritual energy, each surrounded by a purple outline. These spheres appear around Aizen while a 9th sphere manifests directly on his chest in order to further restrain him. Okay, now we're really progressing into the higher levels of Bakudo as we arrive at Bakudo number 81 Danku. This translates to airtight. This is a powerful defensive Kido spell that generates a barrier or a wall to block attacks. It's first used by Byakuya Kuchiki in chapter 302, where he states that Danku can block any Kido based attack with a powerful level up to 89. This claim is later validated during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc when Aizen uses it to block Tessai's Hado number 88 Hiryu Geki Zoku Shinten Raiho. We spoke about this earlier. This is a devastatingly powerful Kido attack. Now next we have Bakudo number 99 part 1 called Kin, and this translates to forbid. This is one of the most powerful Kido spells in Bleach. Due to its high rank, only a select few Shinigami possess the skill to use it. It's first seen in chapter 61 when Tessai uses it to bind Ichigo's arms. He casts the spell by performing an intricate finger motion while extending his arms outward. A binding made of reishi infused cloth and metallic rods then materializes behind Ichigo, and it immediately constricts him. A stronger version of Kin is shown later in chapter -100, where it not only binds the target's arms but engulfs their entire body in reishi based fabric. Numerous iron rods then materialize around the target, forming an X-shaped barrier, providing an even tighter restraint. Now the second part of Bakudo 99 is called Bankin, and this translates to constriction ban. This is an advanced form of the Kin spell, and Bankin escalates the level of binding by wrapping the target entirely in cloth. Afterwards, a massive steel tower slams down onto the bound target, further immobilizing them. When Tessai casts this spell, he hammers his fingers into the ground, releasing a torrent of white spiritual energy that merges with the reishi-based cloth in order to intensify the binding. In the case of Ichigo, he manages to break the first 2 seals before the steel tower landed on him, so the full extent of this spell's power has yet to be fully demonstrated. So that was all of the Bakudo spells. Now we're turning our attention towards the unnumbered Kido spells. The first unnumbered spell that we're going to be talking about is none other than one used by the most powerful member of Squad Zero, Ichibe Hyosube, and this is Urahado Sanodo Tebusatsu. This translates to Secret Hado number 3 Iron Windkill. This makes its debut appearance within chapter 607 during Ichibe's battle against Yhwach. When Ichibe makes a splitting gesture with his hands, a golden dragon's head materializes in the air and unleashes a powerful gust of wind which is aimed at Yhwach. This attack is strong enough to shatter the defensive dome formed by Yhwach's Blutveen Anhaben. The name of this technique, Secret Hado number 3, suggests that there may be more Secret Hado techniques that Ichibe has mastered. Considering the fact that he is a primordial being with extensive knowledge of the Soul Society, it's highly likely that he knows of many hidden and unnumbered Kido spells, making him an even more formidable figure. Next, we have Jugeki Byakurai, which is a modified version of Hado number 4 Byakurai, and it's classified as Kaizo Kido, which is modified Kido. Urahara uses this spell in chapter 401 during his battle against Aizen. Unlike the standard Byakurai, this enhanced version manifests as a red flash of energy, powerful enough to strike even an opponent as formidable as Aizen. The beam resembles the red Reiatsu techniques that Urahara's Shikai produces, and it reinforces the idea that Urahara Urahara adapted and utilized every Kido technique at his disposal during the fight. The spell's uniqueness lies in its modification, showing how skilled Urahara is at manipulating Kido beyond its conventional limitations. Following this, we have Hakufuku, which is another unnumbered Kido spell, and it's used by both Genichimaru and Momo Hinamori. In chapter 129, Momo uses this spell to escape her prison cell, while Gin uses it in chapter 416 to temporarily incapacitate Rangiku during their encounter, thus making her appear as though she has died. The spell induces a powerful illusion, causing the target to see cascading cherry blossoms. The visual distortion leads to blurred vision, disorientation, and eventually unconsciousness. Once the target blacks out, they wake up with no memory of what has happened, making it a highly effective technique for incapacitating enemies without inflicting permanent harm. Next, we have Inemuri, which is a Kido spell used by Head Captain Yamamoto, and we witness this spell in chapter 224. Inemuri translates to forced slumber. He uses it during a scene where Momo becomes increasingly frantic as she tries to convince Hitsugaya that Aizen hasn't betrayed the Soul Society. In order to calm her down, Yamamoto places his hands in front of her eyes, causing her pupils to dilate and her expression to go blank, thus rendering her unconscious. Inemuri works instantly, making it a quick and effective way to subdue a target without causing physical harm. Tanma Otoshi is another unnumbered Kido spell first seen in chapter 217. This spell temporarily renders the target unconscious by emitting a flash of white light from the caster's palm when held in front of the target's face. Tanma Otoshi translates to timeout drop. The light generated from this spell causes the target to black out, and although it is simple in nature, Tanma Otoshi proves to be a useful technique in situations that require non-lethal force. The final unnumbered Kido spell that we'll discuss is Shibirei Yubi, which translates to numbing finger. It is introduced in chapter 48, and this spell is similar to the previous two as it also incapacitates the target, but with a slightly different method. When the caster places a finger in front of the target, a flicker of white energy forms before their eyes. This energy immediately induces a numbing effect, throwing the target into a suspended state of unconsciousness where they are completely unaware of their surroundings. As the name Shibirei Yubi implies, this spell quite literally numbs the target, rendering them temporarily immobilized and defenseless. If you've made it this far into the video, then you're in for a treat as we're about to delve into one of the most exciting aspects of Kido, and these are the barriers and seals. These spells range in strength from weak to nearly impenetrable, and they play a critical role in many battles. Let's begin by breaking down one of the most memorable and complex barriers in the series, which is Shiju Saimon, and it's used by Hachi during the Fate Karakura Town arc. Shiju Saimon is a sophisticated Kido barrier composed of 4 distinct parts. It's no surprise that Hachi, the former vice captain of the Kidō Corps, is the one to cast this intricate spell. To give some context, during chapter 369 of the Fate Karakura Town arc, Soifon, Omaida, and Hachi team up to take down Baragan, the former king of Huecomundo. Baragan's deadly Respira ability causes anything that it touches to age and decay instantly. In chapter 368, we learn that Respira is even powerful enough to dissolve Kido barriers, as Baragan easily breaks through the first cage that Hachi uses to trap him. However, during the fight, Hachi carefully bides his time and negotiates with Soifon, seeking a help to fight Baragan. Once they agree, Hachi employs Shiju Saimon, a powerful trap that can withstand the force of Soifon's Bankai, ultimately aiding in Baragan's destruction. Shinju Saimon, which translates to 4-beast blockade gate, is a Kido spell formed by integrating 4 separate barriers. Together, these barriers form a rectangular prison which traps the target within. The strength of this spell is evident when the barrier remains intact, though it is cracked after withstanding the full force of Soifon's Bankai Jakuho Raikoben. The name Shiju refers to the 4 symbols, which are mythological creatures representing different directions in East Asian traditions. Each part of the barrier corresponds to one of these creatures. Ryubi represents the dragon's tail, Koko symbolizes the tiger's bite, Kigai stands for the turtle's armor, and Hoyoku reflects the bird's wing. Now that we've discussed the spells, we will now understand how the 4 separate spells of Shiju Saimon operate. Ryubi no Jomon, which is Dragon Tail Castle Gate, is a Kido spell used in chapter 369. It blocks Baragan from being able to reach Hachi. Almost a dozen white columns are created from hand movements in order to form a massive barrier which is hexagonal in shape. Kokono Jomon, which translates to Tiger Bite Castle Gate, is a Kido spell that manifests as a large flat sphere with an inner section that can be opened up. This opening up of the inner section closely alludes to the opening of fangs and allows attacks to pass through the barrier. Kigai no Jomon, which translates to the Gate of Turtle Shell, forms a barrier composed of smaller hexagons that merge into a larger structure, and this creates a labyrinth-like defense echoing the protective nature of a tortoise's shell, making it ideal for repelling attacks. Finally, Hoyoku no Jomon, which translates to the Gate of Phoenix Wings. This is the final one that completes the Shiju Simon barrier, and this Kido creates a barrier that resembles the wings and body of a phoenix, symbolizing rebirth and protection. When combined with the other three gates, Ryubi, Koko, and Kigai, it forms the ultimate defense known as Shiju Simon. Kubo's creativity with Kido truly peaked in chapter 369, and I hope that we get to see more standout moments like this from Hachi in future installments of the series. The symbolism and artwork during this scene were truly exceptional, and I believe that there was no better character to defeat Baragon using Kido than Hachi. His non-combative nature is brilliantly contrasted with his mastery of Kido, making him the perfect counter to Baragon. So let's talk about the other barriers and seals, as we begin with Hachigyo Sogai, which translates to Twin Cliffs. This is a Kido spell developed by Hachi, first seen in chapter 225. This barrier operates on a metaphysical level, erasing whatever it encloses from existence. It creates a psychological or metaphysical discontinuity, making it impossible for outsiders to perceive the space that it occupies. In chapter 225, Orihime notices birds and cats avoiding what seems like an invisible wall, as Orihime realizes that it's a force field. This barrier blocks the building from people's minds, rendering it invisible and unapproachable in their perception. Interestingly, Orihime is able to penetrate this barrier using her Shunshun Rika, which functions similarly to Hachi's technique. As Love points out, it should have been impossible for a regular human to bypass Hachi's otherwise impermeable force field. El Escuda, Spanish for the shield, is a Kido spell used briefly by Aizen in chapter 389. Without even stating the name or incantation, Aizen summons a light green barrier that effortlessly blocks a simultaneous attack from Captains Hitsugaya and Shunsui. Next we have Kyogai, another Kido spell used by Hachi in chapter 389. This is used to heal Hiyori. By holding his arms above her, Hachi surrounds Hiyori with a semi-transparent yellow prism of Reiatsu. This prism freezes her condition, preventing death from the severe wound that she has received and giving her more time to recover. Following this is Fusatsu Kake, which translates to Seal Slaying Fire Penance. This is a specialized Kido created by Urahara, and it's used against Aizen. This spell conjures glowing golden rings around the wrists of the target, causing the Shinigami to be incapacitated by their own Reiatsu. By blocking the outlets for their Reiatsu, this spell effectively cuts off their spiritual power. Another Kido is Kyuju Roke Kakafumetsu, which translates to 96 capital fire suspended seal destruction. This is another Kido seal created by Urahara, and it's used against Aizen in chapter 421. This spell is notable for activating on its own after Aizen was weakened by Ichigo's final Getsugatensho. As Aizen attempts to ascend into an even higher state, he is impaled by several glowing crucifixes which merge into a star-shaped barrier that traps him. This barrier confines Aizen until he is transported to the Soul Society. Hakudan Kepeki, which translates to Ultimate White Wall, is an unnumbered Kido spell developed by Nanao, first seen in chapter 551. During the second Quincy invasion, Nanao uses this spell to stop Hashward from entering the 1st Division barracks. Hashward is unsure whether if his power is being repelled or absorbed, and Nanao explains that Hakudan Kepeki prevents any Quincy abilities from penetrating the barrier for a limited time. The barrier is decorated with the symbol of the Kidō Corps surrounding the kanji for 1, reflecting its strength and uniqueness. Like a lot of Kido experts and Kido masters, Nanao's expertise in Kido earned her the rank of lieutenant, and she likely perfected this technique after the 1st Quincy invasion. This highly specialized cube-shaped barrier is her own creation, as confirmed when she states that no other Shinigami can use it, and even Hashward praises her for crafting such an impressive spell, but he also criticizes her for not teaching this to the other Shinigami because it clearly is an invaluable ability. Next we have Roppo Fujin, which translates to Hexagon Seal Array, and this is a Kido spell by Hachi used in chapter 368. This stereoscopic green barrier shaped like a crucifix surrounds Baragon but is effortlessly broken by his Respira in the following chapter. Milon Escudo is a Kido spell used by Aizen in chapter 388, and this is Spanish for Million Shield. When Ichigo emerges from the Garganta and prepares to attack, Aizen summons this light green hexagonal barrier to protect himself. Initially unseen, the barrier appears only when activated, and it expands to shield Aizen from external attacks. It gathers spiritual pressure into a single point, temporarily absorbing the impact of the attack before dispersing it outward. This barrier was able to block a point-blank Getsuga Tensho from Ichigo's Bankai. Standing Ovation is a Kido spell used by Hachi in chapter 366. The spell activates when Hachi snaps his fingers repeatedly, creating a blue cube-shaped barrier around each Menos Grande. Once Hachi clasps his hands together, a wave of Reiatsu emanates from him, turning the cubes red before they collapse, instantly decapitating the Menos Grande. This technique is particularly effective for targeting multiple enemies at once, as demonstrated by the sheer number of Menos that were taken out. Okay, next we have uncategorized Kido spells which neither fall under Hado or Bakudo. So we're starting with Jikan Teshi and Kukan Teni. These two powerful spells are used by Tessai during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. They deal with time suspension and space dislocation. Since they are forbidden spells, Tessai even asks Urahara to close his eyes and ears when he casts them. Jiken Teshai halts the flow of time within a specific area, produced when Tessai brings his palms together, creating a green cube-shaped light. Meanwhile, Kukan Teni allows the user to relocate a specific portion of space from one location to another. Any spells active during Kukan Teni remain functional even after the transportation has taken place. This is how Tessai successfully stops time and relocates the Vizards to safety. The use of either of these spells is severe enough to warrant a life sentence within the central Great Underground Prison's third level called Shugo. Another uncategorized spell is Keikai Gi. This translates to World Tying Right. This is a Kido spell used by Urahara in chapter 240. This spell opens a portal to the Garganta, a sub-dimension filled with dense spirit particles which connects the human world and Hueco Mundo. The portal is formed between two large rock formations with massive wooden poles protruding from them to anchor the connection between dimensions. Sentan Hakuja is a Kido spell used in chapter 171, and it translates to Thousand Coil White Snake. It is used by Kaname Tozen, Genichimaru, and Tokinada Tsuneyashiro. The spell manifests as a long white cloth that coils around its targets, engulfing them in its spirals. Once the cloth tightens, it teleports the targets to another location with a white spark. Next we have Noren Mekuri, which translates to curtain stripping. This is a Kido spell first seen in the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, and is used by Shinji Hirako. This spell reveals anything hidden from sight by cancelling delusive techniques like Bakudo 26 Kyoko. This is used to conceal objects or people. Shinji stretches out his hand, pulling back an invisible curtain of air which tears apart the active concealment technique. As he does so, a light blue-violet atmosphere surrounds the object being revealed until it becomes visible. Okay, we also have Kagizaki, which translates to Bound Blossom, and this is one of the most time-consuming Kido spells, and it's used by the Shiba clan for launching their Kaku Taiho, which is their flower crane cannon. It is seen in chapter 84, and only Kukaku Shiba, Ganju Shiba, and Kogan Nehiko and Shirogan Nehiko are able to use this spell. Kagizaki requires two incantations. The first controls the cannonball's launch and initial direction, while the second controls its speed and path. Next we have Hanki, which is a Kido cancellation technique used by Yoruichi in chapter 159. It works by striking an opponent's Kido with an equal and opposite Kido of the same strength and magnitude, effectively neutralizing the attack and stopping their movements. Chocolate Bar Slider is a Kido spell used by Hachi
in chapter 658 during the Vizard's assault on Gerard Valkyrie. Hachi conjures 5 rectangular crystals behind his hands and launches them at the opponent. These crystals multiply upon contact, battering the enemy from multiple angles with hammer-like force. Now that we've covered all of the Kidō spells revealed within the canon of Bleach, let's now look at some of the Kidō spells seen only in the anime. Most of these non-canon spells are low level and they appear during filler episodes. The first 2 anime-only Bakudo spells are both ranked at number 9. One is called Geki and it was nearly featured in the manga in chapter 21, but Ichigo stopped Rukia before she could complete the incantation. However, in episode 9 of the anime, Rukia uses Geki to fully paralyze her target by drawing symbols in the air as red energy surrounds her entire body, trapping her target and rendering them immobile. The other Bakudo number 9 is called Horin, and this is used by Momo during the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc in episode 239. Momo creates a orange rope of energy adorned with yellow designs using her middle and forefinger. The rope wraps around and immobilizes her target, and Momo controls its movements by keeping hold of one end. Notably, the rope can reconnect with itself after capturing an opponent, allowing Momo to maintain her hold over them. Another Bakudo is Shiso Keppu, and this is a spell used in the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc. While it is not explicitly classified or ranked, it resembles a Bakudo spell due to its ability to seal targets. This technique was used to imprison Koga Kuchiki. The target is secured with 4 spears piercing their hands and legs, and they then are lifted into the air enclosed within a black box resembling a casket. The 4 spears puncture the box, sealing the target for over 100 years. Interestingly, the incantation to end this spell must be chanted in the presence of the sealed target, as revealed in episode 249. Now, moving on to the Hado spells, Kongo Baku, which translates to Adamantine Blast, is featured in episode 252 of the anime, and it's used by Koga Kuchiki. This spell creates a globular explosion of red energy, similar in strength to Hado number 33 Sokatsui. Koga channels the explosion through the tip of his spear. Since both Koga and Byakuya are members of the Kuchiki family, one could argue that Koga's use of Kogan Baku mirrors Byakuya's mastery of Sokatsui. However, without an official rank, it's difficult to say if this spell matches the powers of a Hado spell that is ranked in the 30s. Another unranked Hado spell used by Koga is in episode 252, and it's a Gaki Reko, which translates to Raging Light Fang. This spell forms a sphere of energy which fires several green light blasts from its center, creating a cage-like structure around the target. Like Kogan Gaku, Koga Kuchiki casts this spell using the tip of his spear. The third Kidō spell used by Koga is in episode 252, and it's called Hyogo Seiran, which translates to Glacier Vapor Storm. This appears to be the most powerful of his Kidō spells, and this is an ice-based spell which is strong enough to penetrate Bakudo 81 Danku and destroy a group of Menos Grande. By releasing a torrent of ice, Koga freezes both his enemies and the surrounding environment, again channeling the attack through the tip of his spear. Now lastly, we have Mushikui Dama, which translates to Worm-Eaten Ball. This is an unranked Kidō spell featured in chapter 93 of the manga and in episode 29 of the anime. Mayuri uses this spell to discharge a small but yet powerful wave of energy, which creates a small hole in the surface that it strikes. Moving on, let's talk about the Kidō Corps briefly. This is an organization which mostly operates behind the scenes throughout the Bleach series. Apart from tasks like opening the Senkaimon and unleashing the Sokyoku, they don't play a prominent role in the story. We know that the organization should have key leadership positions such as Kidō Corps Commander, Kidō Corps Captain, and Kidō Corps Lieutenant. However, after the events of the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, both Tessai and Hachi fled to the human world, leaving the Kidō Corps without its leaders. One common and understandable complaint from Bleach fans is that we never truly see characters like Tessai reach their full potential. For example, during the battle against Aizen in Karakura Town, Tessai was hardly present despite being one of the greatest Kido masters in the Soul Society. Perhaps he was helping Urahara behind the scenes, considering his deep understanding of Kido. It's possible that he assisted Urahara in creating the seal that locked up Aizen. Additionally, during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, Ukitake mentions that it's rare to see anyone from the Kidō Corps, which could hint at an in-universe reason for their minimal presence. However, if Kubo continues with future Bleach arcs like the Hell arc, Kido won't be neglected hopefully, as there is so much potential for expanding this magical system, and it serves as as a great way to gauge the strength of various characters based upon the numbered Kidō spells that they can use. The use of Kidō is deeply linked to a Shinigami's spiritual energy and their spiritual pressure. By assigning numerical power levels to Kidō, we can better identify which characters are the strongest. What makes Kidō unique is that it offers a shared pool of techniques accessible to different characters, unlike Zanbakudo, which are unique abilities and powers to each Shinigami. Given that Bleach is a shonen series that often relies on battles to drive the plot forward, it is slightly disappointing that Kidō was featured less during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, but I do believe that the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime will hopefully correct this. I'm a huge fan of the Kidō power system because there's a wide variety of Kidō spells, and some of you may or may not have been familiar with some of them that I've mentioned in this video. Hopefully this video has helped you to clarify just how many different Bakudo and Hado spells there are, the ones that are categorized and uncategorized. If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about Kidō within this video, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of my comprehensive breakdown of every Kidō spell in Bleach, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.